Hello and welcome back to the Essex Allotment Farm. My name's Alex. This is a Four Seasons market garden of which I'm the founder. And for its most part, the business sells organic vegetables to end consumer through vegetable service and farmers markets. Now the business also does some consultancy stuff. And if you're familiar with my channel, you'll have been watching both stories as they progress this season. Thanks for joining me. It's raining yet again. However, yesterday was beautiful, so I'm not going to moan about the weather. I took advantage of, I'd worked the last 14 days straight in some capacity or another. So I took advantage of the sunshine yesterday. I didn't do any farming, which I'm now beginning to regret because I'm now doing it here in the chucking it down rain. However, you got to take advantage of it. I went for a lovely walk. I went out with my partner and yeah, just had a fantastic weekend. And enjoyed the sunshine, and it's important to do that stuff. Anyway, in today's video, we're going to be planting potatoes. In this video, we're going to be focusing on planting potatoes in buckets or containers. I'm going to show you how I do it, which is, again, nothing groundbreaking. There's a few little quirks and stuff that I've learned along the years, but I'll show you how I do it, and you can compare it to the thousands and thousands of other how to grow potatoes in buckets videos out there on YouTube, and let me know what you think. So first of all, why do I grow my potatoes in buckets? And the truth of the matter is, I don't grow them all in buckets. I grow my very first planting in buckets. And that is because I find it easier to manipulate the temperature and the conditions for growing in early in the season, when there's potential for late frosts, more potential for pest damage. And it's just easier to mollycoddle them through the first sort of few months or few weeks, of their life. So that's why I grow my first lot of potatoes in buckets, and then I go to in the field planting, which I can put some clips up of from last season. When I'm talking about buckets, what I mean is effectively any container. So I'm really lucky. I've got about 60 of these. I'm not 100% sure how many litres they are, but I would say between 25 and 30 litre buckets with lots of nice drainage holes in them. And I grow my potatoes in these, but in reality, you can grow them in pretty much any size container above sort of 10 litres. So whether that's a bag, whether that's a bucket or anything else that you can think of, in reality, you can have a successful harvest in any kind of container. The important things just with most plants, this weather is brutal. I'm actually going to stick my mid-sentence, mid-film in, which I'm not going to retake. I'm going to put my hood up because this is getting brutal. So what was I saying? Yeah, like any other sort of plant that you're growing in the container, it needs to just have good drainage holes and be nice and sturdy. And these are plastic, so I like to have big, strong containers that I can use year on and year on. Now, I'm really lucky. I've got about 60 of these buckets, and I'm probably going to do about 40, so maybe 60 buckets for my first planting of potatoes. I'll do this bit back in the shed just to jump out the rain for 5 minutes. But I guess the next question to answer is, do I chip my potatoes? Well, this is a bit of a funny one, really. I don't chip my potatoes. However, that, if I can do it, is chitted. And that's just done that itself just because of where I'd left them in the potting shed. But by rule, I don't bother doing it. I think it probably gains you maybe a week. Maybe some people would argue more than a week. But I'm not worried about timing. When you're growing commercially, I am worried about timing, but I've got a specific time that I want them for. So when you're talking about commercial growing, hold on a minute. Let me just show you something. So I was distracted because I've got fresh canes down here in the potting shed. And I looked left from the camera, and up in the corner of the shed is a snail, and that thing is going to have to go. Right, yes, sorry. So as a general rule, I don't chip my potatoes. These have chitted. I think it gives you a week's bonus, but I'm growing these specifically for a date, which is in about 12 to 14 weeks time. So I know if I plant them out in the next week or so, I've got enough time to get those growth for Swift or first early. They need to be in the ground. As long as the weather plays ball, in about 14 weeks time, they'll be ready to harvest. So the first stage is to fill the buckets or put the base layer in. Now I'm using this well rotted mixture of rabbit bedding, rabbit manure, grass cuttings. I'm using the really composted stuff from the base of the pile, and I'm putting a small layer in the bottom. Again, those who are familiar with my channel will know about this stuff. I get it free, dropped off. I mix it with some extra nitrogen and just let it rot down for over a year. And it's packed full of nutrients and great for the soil. We use it as a top dressing quite a lot in our main beds. And I guess at this point it's good to talk about my approach to this. So a lot of people will grow buckets, and what they'll do is they'll get a homemade or shop bought compost. They'll fill their bucket up a third with that compost, put the seed potatoes in, and then fill it up either in stages, you know, the second third, just to give them a covering, and then let them break the fruit and top the bucket up in, say, 5 or 6 weeks time. I don't do that because what I've learned over a few years growing potatoes this way is that if the potato is in contact with soil, that will encourage the growth. What is more important than having compost in the full length of the full height of the bucket is what nutrients you're giving it. So you can grow potatoes by resting them on the floor, and Liz Zorab's done a great video on this, and then just covering them in organic matter, whether that's straw, wood chips, hay, grass cuttings, and you don't have to earth them up, in inverted commas, with compost in particular, or soil. So I've taken that a step further and thought, what do potatoes need? They're hungry plants. They eat a lot of the nutrients out of the ground. And rather than wasting money and precious resources on filling 50 to 60 buckets up with pure fine compost, is that I use this technique, which starts off with a layer of manure, and then, as I show you in a minute, I use different layers of different materials to earth those potatoes up. So I'll do one at a time for you guys to see the whole process. But that's the first bucket, or the first bucket I'm doing in this video, and it's just got that well rotted manure and bedding mixture in the base, and I've just patted it down a little bit with my foot, not compacted it too much. That's full of moisture because we don't cover that with those particular piles. It's full of nitrogen. It's full of great beneficial soil life, as worms and bacteria and all sorts in that. So beneficial microbes, should I say. So that will give a good foundation and a good feed for the early parts of the potato growth. At this point, this is where I put the seed potatoes in. So I'm just going to do that for you. I just press them halfway into the ground, or halfway into that manure. In a 25 to 30 litre bucket, I'm going to put 2 seed potatoes, Swift. Again, this is where, hold on one second, where I talked to you about the size of the container, size of the buckets that you've got available, whether that's a bag, a potato sack, an old compost bag, as long as it's got drainage holes. This is where the size to ratio of seed potatoes matters. You can grow them in any size container over, say, 10 litres. If it was a 10 to 15 litre bucket, I'd put 1 seed potato in there. If it was a 45 to 50 litre bucket, like one I've got over here, if I show you, this one's got mint growing in it, but if I show you this one here, that's just some rubbish I'm taking away. Let me focus it. That's a 45 litre bucket. I would put 3 seed potatoes in that, maybe even 4. Depending on the variety. But with this particular scenario, I feel like 2 is adequate. I'm going to put loads and loads and loads of beneficial nutrients in there, and I think there's a great chance that for maybe the 3rd year of me doing these in these containers, we'll get a really decent crop from a bucket this size with 2 seed potatoes in it. What's next? I hear you all scream through the camera. Well, in the interest of those nutrients that we were talking about, at this point I like to put in a couple of handfuls of, or maybe just 1 handful of blood, fish and bone slow release pellets, organic, sustainably sourced blood, fish and bone. And this is high in potassium and nitrogen, which are potato plants at the young stage of the health of the tuber and plant development need. There are some other nutrients like magnesium and stuff like that, and zinc maybe, that they need for skin and taste of potatoes, which we can look at as the growth continues. But at this stage, high potassium, high nitrogen, blood, fish and bone pellets, slow release, to give them a nitrogen boost and a potassium boost early on. And then at this point, I've just got a nice, this is actually shop bought because I'm getting low on finished compost, but a nice shop bought organic peat-free multi-purpose compost. And I'm going to add a few handfuls of this stuff just to cover the seed potatoes. So I'm going to try and do that this one-handed. So give me a second so I can film this for you. And all I'm doing is adding, well, these are half handfuls, so maybe 6, 7 of these just to cover the potatoes so that they're, I talked about it touching soil to trigger that growth. And then that's just enough to cover the potatoes. And that's what they'll effectively grow in their early life. Would you believe it? The sun's actually trying to come out and it stopped raining, which is an absolute bonus because at this stage we need to do the final 2 stages of our seed potato planting. And you've probably seen from the footage earlier that my final layer is grass clippings. So yes, the final layer is grass clippings, and this is about excluding the light, having something nitrogen rich that's going to be breaking down over the course of the next sort of 12, 14, 16 weeks, depending on how long that they're in here for, and also about moisture retention. But this links back to what I was saying about that if the seed potato, which is now in in contact with the soil, will trigger that growth. And that is all the compost you'll need. The plan now is to earth these buckets up and continue to add layers and layers of organic matter that will break down and add benefits to the soil. This one mainly is around locking in the moisture. So I just put a nice layer of grass clippings on the top, which I collect with the lawnmower at this time of year. Just put it on the highest setting and clip the tops off and add that as a final layer to the buckets. And as I said, as the potatoes break the surface and grow, I'll add more and more layers of nutrient benefit materials, but not necessarily finished compost until the pot's really, really full and the plants kick on from there. And in a very similar style to a no dig potato video I did before, but that was aimed at potatoes in the beds. Again, risking to sound like a broken record, as long as you keep the nutrient levels and the moisture levels correct, you don't need to fill huge buckets up with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of finished compost. I'm going to give these a good water as my final stage at this time, and I'll carry on with the other 40 to 50 buckets that I've got left to do. So eventually, as I said, we will fill those buckets up, and you can use all sorts. So we need to give them more material to grow in. So I probably will add another layer of the rabbit compost or any kind of manure, as long as it's not really hot and fresh manure, at some point when they're breaking through on top of the grass cuttings. But then I might add straw, I might have hay, I might add more grass clippings, wood chip, anything really to fill those buckets up, to earth up and exclude the light from the tubers as they grow so we don't get green potatoes, and add some kind of nutritious benefit to the soil. If I feel, and this was the first time I did it, I hadn't got the nutrients levels right, the get out of jail is always adding more. We've only filled those buckets just over halfway. So the get out of jail free card is, if you feel that it's going wrong, you can add more finished compost. We can go and buy some shop bought compost or harvest some more of my compost pile that is more finished compost and add that to the buckets. But I think by adding a little bit more manure, a little bit more growing medium, and lots of organic matter like straws, hays, wood chips, as I've said quite a few times in this video, we've got an opportunity to grow a really good harvest of potatoes in a more cost-effective way than just filling up buckets with lots and lots and lots of finished compost. I hope you enjoyed this quick video. I am now going to crack on and get the rest of these buckets planted up, and of course with all the best intentions and a bit of luck, I'll be able to keep you updated with how this gets on as I add more stuff, as the potatoes break surface. And as the season goes on, over the next 12 to 16 weeks, I'll be able to continue this journey with you guys, and in somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks, we will harvest these buckets and we'll see how successful we were. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to follow along. Do all those things that help my channel grow. It's really, really appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.